we'll just give it a couple of more minutes till the time I think everything gets synced up, and I think we'll start. Okay, I guess we'll start. So good morning, everyone, and thank you everyone for joining in. Special thank you for all the panelists to be there. I know it's not easy to spare an hour and a half on a Friday morning to do it. So special thank you for everyone who's on the panel today, and also for the attendees who have taken time to attend the webinar as well. We have esteemed set of panelists. I think I would encourage everybody in the audience to also ask questions to pick their brains. I think this panelist encompasses about almost 150 odd years of experience put together. This is a panel which can answer any question that you would want under the sun for soybean and oilseeds in general. I will just take a few minutes to introduce the panelists, and then we would start with the panelists expressing their views about the sector. On the panel, we have Sri Atul Chaturvedi ji. He doesn't need an introduction, but I would just say a few words. I think everybody who's listening to this webinar, I think that everybody would know him very, very well. Sri Atul ji is a veteran in the vegetable oil seeds and agro business for India. He has been there for more than 4 decades, successful in managing very general and strategic management experience in the field of manufacturing, trading, and agri infrastructure development. He has been associated with Adani Group since 1998 and has played a key role in the development of agro and agri infrastructure business of the group. He's currently executive chairman of Renuka Sugar, as well as a director of Adani, and we also know him as he's a president of Solvent Extractor Association as well. He is currently associated with various organizations and trade bodies. As I said, he's a president of SEA, a leading trade body in vegetable oil industry. For some of you who would have attended the AGM and the webinar yesterday, he's been deputy chairman of SOPA. He's also associated with CII and headed the task force for edible oil and oil seeds. Sri Atulji, thank you very much for joining in today and taking your time. I'll also now introduce Sri D.N. Pathakji. He's the executive director for SOPA, Soybean Processor Association. Sri Pathakji is the executive director for SOPA, the apex body for soybean industry and trade in India for the last 6 years. He had first joined SOPA in 1994. Since then, he has been working mainly in the oilseed sector in various capacities as advisor for Indian Oilseeds and Produce Export Promotion Council, advisor for Indian Grains and Pulses Association, executive director of All India Rice Exports Association, the Central Organization of Oils, Trade and Industry, and the Indian Vegetable Oil Processors Association. In addition to having worked with industry associations, he also has hands-on experience of the agriculture processing industry and has worked as General Manager Corporate Affairs for Alpine Industries Limited. Pathakji, thank you very much for joining us today and taking time out. I would now introduce Mr. KM Singh, favorably known as KM in the agri-finance industry. So KM is presently working with Yes Bank in Agri-Business Management Group as the president and head commodities. He has close to 2 decades of rich and diversified work experience in agri and finance industry in various senior leadership roles, managing agri-business, retail, SME, mid-markets and corporate banking. He's also worked at NCML, looking at collateral management, warehousing and procurement, and also prior experiences include sales, marketing, management of dealers, and distributor network for North India with Dow AgroSciences. He holds a master's degree in agriculture economics from BHU, Varanasi, and postgraduate diploma in agribusiness from NIAM. KM, welcome, and thank you again for your time joining us in the webinar today. I'll introduce our speaker also, Prashant Mishra. I think is joining in. So Prashant ji is currently head of oilseeds and pulses business at ITC Limited. Prashant ji joined ITC ABD in 1991. In his career spanning 3 decades at ITC, he's worked in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan as a branch manager. Since 2012, he's been leading the oilseeds and pulses business. He's also a key member of the eChopal formation and expansion. And we'll extend our welcome once Prashant ji is online. I would also welcome Mr. Brajat Singh. Brajat ji is the Chief Executive Officer of Origo Commodities. He's an experienced agri-business professional with extensive experience in rural supply chain and distribution of agriculture inputs, farmer awareness programs, technology transfers, organized retail, contract farming, corporate banking, and post-harvest. He also heads the core group on post-harvest management and infrastructure under Expert Committee on Agri-Business in PhD Chamber of Commerce. He is also the recipient of Rashtriya Media Ratan Award 2014. He holds BSc Agriculture, MSc Agriculture from GB Fund, and an MBA from Sikkim Manipal University. So welcome to everybody, and I extend one more time, thank you for taking time out. We really appreciate it. We would start off by Shri Atulji. I think we would start off with you. We just wanted to, I think as a keynote speaker, we wanted to understand, I guess, broader challenges and opportunity for coming season. And we have a few follow-up questions on the farm reforms after that, but just your expertise, experience based, the coming season, the near term, what you see as the top 2-3 challenges, including investments or financing, everything put together. But your views, Shri Atulji, before we start off, and then we go into the questions for every panelist. Atulji, over to you.
No, as far as the challenges for the new season is concerned, I think soya industry is a lot more lucky because the crop seems to be much better than what it was last year. So you could probably have a crop in excess of about 10 million tons, or if some would say that maybe closer to about 10.5 or somewhere around that region. So that should take care of the raw material requirement of the industry, but edible oil likely to remain reasonably firm, so that's not an issue. But finding a home for soybean meal will continue to remain a challenge as far as this industry is concerned. But the only silver lining in all this is that the meal requirement in the world has actually gone up. And in fact, if you really look at the soybean sector in the Latin America and the Northern Hemisphere, China has been buying as if there is no tomorrow. Okay. Because Chinese hog numbers have gone through the roof. They've practically doubled in the last 6 to 8 months. So their requirement for meal has really gone up. So whatever crushing you will see happening is going to be largely as far as meal requirement is concerned. So I think this is a good opportunity for our industry to once again tap the organic meal segment or the non-GM meal segment of Europe or whichever part of the world we are able to find a home for our meal. If we can find a home for the meal, the industry can do well. But having said that, the challenge in terms of the demand destruction is quite strong. But luckily for our industry, the demand destruction has largely been confined to palm. Okay. And that's because palm goes in for the HoReCa and the out-of-home consumption segment. So as far as direct to home consumption is concerned, both soya and sunflower seem to have a pretty strong demand. So that's a plus and a positive point for our industry. Financing should not be too much of an issue this year because banks seem to be flush with funds and with not many takers. So I don't see too much of an issue there. But as far as the soya industry is concerned, we certainly feel that the incentives which were available for export in the past may be a lot more difficult to come by this year because the government finances and the tax collection as far as the center is concerned is not very hunky-dory. And obviously they are cutting down on all the export incentives and subsidies and blah, blah, blah. So that would definitely be a challenge. So I think the industry will have to probably think out of the box to come out of this quagmire. That's it.
Right. And Atulji, you mentioned something about demand destruction, and with the poultry industry the way it is right now, where do you see the demand for DOC domestically coming from?
No, I think celebratory consumption, marriages, out of home, that sector is certainly in trouble. And I was talking to a big poultry farmer. He says, unless and until this segment doesn't kick off,
Yeah.
The demand from this sector is not going to be too great. Unlike China, where the meat consumption is very high and soybean meal goes largely as swine feed or pig feed, in India, it doesn't go as cattle feed. If it were to go as cattle feed, then the demand destruction would not have been there.
Will rise, yeah.
Poultry, definitely, we see a bit of a challenge there.
Okay. Atulji, I guess the next area that we wanted to pick your brain on was your views on the recent farm reforms. And I think linked to that, just wanted to understand from you, given your past experiences as well, that how would you see these reforms helping investment in agri infrastructure? And do you see the corporates coming into this sector a lot more? Because yesterday as well, we were listening to the amount of investment that has flown into agri, whether it's hedge funds or everybody else across the globe. We haven't seen that much in India as compared to what we have seen globally. But how would you link the investments to the farm reforms? And do you see that changing over the years, or at least in the next few months as well?
First things first, I think as far as the farm reforms are concerned, it has come too late. In fact, the farm reforms should have come 30 years back. But having said that, jis din aankh khule us din savera, that is an old Indian saying. So I would welcome it with open arms, and there's no reason why there should be opposition to it, because these farm reforms are actually farmer friendly. Now let's look at the APMCs, how they have panned out over the years. APMC, when they were probably conceived, that was the time when the Indian farmer was a lot more naive and did not have an exposure to the world. Internet had still not come into being. Mobile phones were just not there. So the information arbitrage available to the buyer was huge. And somebody who was smart was able to extract much more than what the poor farmer was getting. But no longer now to consider and to think that an Indian farmer is not intelligent, I would say that would be the biggest mistake we'll ever make. The Indian farmer is actually much more smarter than what we are. And over the years, what has also happened as far as the APMCs are concerned is they have practically outlived their utility, because monopoly breeds corruption. Whether we like it or not, the fact remains, you were actually compelling the poor farmer to sell only via the mandis. So the poor farmer was shackled. He had no other option. And whoever was controlling the mandi, obviously I'm talking about the local level politicians or the aratyas or whatever. So they had a field day and they could manipulate things. And obviously, now mandis have not been withdrawn. Mandis are still going to exist. But the farmer has an option whether to sell via the mandi or directly to a consumer. And what had also happened over the years was the state governments started using mandis as a source of big time revenue. Look at what Punjab and Haryana has been doing. The taxation is massive. I'm told at some count that in Punjab, 3,500 to 4,000 crores must be actually the revenue which the government may be generating out of these mandis. But then ultimately somebody is paying for it. And at the end of the day, the poor farmer is going to pay for it. So we welcome the reforms as far as mandi is concerned. Secondly, and that is something very close to my heart, is the abolition of Essential Commodities Act. That is something which has its origin during the socialist era of the 60s and 70s, when India was actually surviving from ship to fork. But that we've come a long way. Now you are surplus in practically all the food items. Leave aside maybe edible oils or oilseeds and marginally as far as pulses is concerned. We've come a long way. And to still continue to have ECA, whose sell-by date was long over, maybe over 35 years, and the kind of power which was given to the food inspectors was unimaginable. They had the capacity to haul up the managing director of a large corporate and put him behind bars. No questions asked. How very stupid. And I'm rather amused that you have a scenario where I find some of the farmer leaders are actually opposing the withdrawal of ECA, which was fundamentally opposed to the farmer interest. If you are ensuring that the no buyer buys your product, obviously the product is going to sell at a lower cost, lower price, and ultimately who's going to be affected? This the farmer. And the third point which you asked on the corporates getting into agri, my take is I think it's too much of political posturing which is happening. No corporate is lined up to put money into invest money in the agri sector as long as there is political opposition to the same. My take is that once things start coming down and becoming much more normal, which it will, and I don't see too much of time happening, that's the time you would see corporates seriously evaluating getting into the agri space. To start with, probably the investments would come more on the infrastructure side. And this sector, the infrastructure, agri infrastructure sector has been actually crying for investment. Friends who have actually traveled in Punjab and Haryana between Delhi and Chandigarh, and when you see those big heaps of wheat lying in the open, covered in tarpaulins and the rains splashing all over, it's a terrible sight. In fact, in Punjab and Haryana, they call wheat as kanak. Kanak actually means gold. And they have become specialists in converting gold into dust. We are running some silos in that part of the world, in Moga and Kaithal. The losses as far as the silos is concerned is not even 0.25%. It's practically zero. And poor infrastructure in a country actually results in almost something like 4 to 5% losses, which may actually be more than what Australia exports. So it's a huge number. So I think that sector is crying for investment. I can also share with you our own experience as far as Himachal Pradesh is concerned. I actually still happen to take care of a company, an Adani company, where we are into this apples. We store apples in Himachal Pradesh. We've got these controlled atmosphere storages. Before we put up those storage apples, those controlled atmosphere storages at 3 places in Himachal, I am told the average realization for the farmers was just about 10 to 12 rupees a kilo at his farm gate. Now the farmers' average realization in the last decade or so has shot up to 40, 50 rupees. What used to happen was the farmer used to get 10 rupees, but as a consumer, you would only be paying something like 150 or 200 odd rupees. In fact, in CII, we actually did a research, and that study actually said that the 1-1-1 syndrome, the farmer gets 1 rupee and the consumer pays 4. So what was that? That was just nothing but the inefficiencies of the supply chain. I think we can probably see a lot more investment coming in that side, and that will be good for the country, and it will be definitely very good for the farmers, and it will be very good for their income as well. So we welcome these reforms, and hopefully we will have corporates seriously evaluating investment, because this sector requires massive investment and has been crying for investment.
Thank you, Atulji. Thank you very much. I think that is correct. I think we see a lot of investment opportunities even today. I think Adani has contributed a lot more towards the agri infrastructure, particularly the silos we see in the Punjab and Haryana and other places. I think there are other opportunities for silo construction that are coming up. I think hopefully corporates will participate a lot more. And the agri as a more of a blue collar as compared to white collar, I think the corporates will participate a lot more, hopefully in the future. And as you said, I think the reforms will make it more open market. And once it's more open market driven, then the interference will be hopefully lower, and then companies can participate. Atulji, thank you very much. We would now like to invite Pathakji. Pathakji, what we wanted to ask you and get your views on was to look at, wanted to invite your views on the national mission on edible oils, how India could look at becoming Atmanirbhar in just oil consumption overall. Broadly also then continuing your views on the GM technology, like broadly should it be adopted? And just the estimates on crop, because I think Atulji already mentioned it's close to 10 million tons. We have seen the first estimates and then some crop damage, but I think you being at SOPA, you would have, I think your guidance would help us a lot in terms of where it would end up when the season opens up. So Pathakji, over to you.
Let's first talk about the National Mission on Edible Oils. As Atulji said, this is also late. In fact, we had a mission NMOP in 1986, headed by Sam Petroda. Then the mission faded out, then it became ISOPOM, then it became NMOP, and then I think this government has now gone on to make another mission, which is National Mission on Edible Oil. But this time, the capital outlay is huge, about 14,000 crores in 5 years. So this mission, if it is implemented properly, it's got 4 mini missions. One is productivity enhancement. The other one is how to reduce oil consumption and oil imports. The third one is to look at the health aspects and all. So there are 4 mini missions. And the problem with this mission, which I foresee, is that the money is going to be routed through the states. And the problem of productivity of oilseeds is all mostly because of extension. I have some slides, I prepared some slides on what our productivity is. Let me show you. This is a 30-year view. Can you see it? No.
Not yet, Patil.
Okay, just a second, just a second. I have to
Sure,
share
sure,
it.
sure. Yeah.
I forgot to, here it is. Can you see it now?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
come up, yes. Yes.
So this is a 30-year view, 30-year information from 1991 up to 2019-20. You see the productivity. It's not going anywhere. In a very bad year, you see a very low productivity. In the best of years, you see a productivity of 1300 close, but that's a government figure, which we slightly doubt all the time. So it has been hovering around 1000 to 1100 close, and that is our main problem. So NMBO tries to address this in a big way, and we are hoping that this time they have got it right. They are going to involve private players like SOPA and SCA in a big way. SCA is working on mustard and I think castor seed. We have been exclusively working on soybean. So if the mission is implemented properly, I believe it will help. We have a very big task to achieve. We grow about 32 million tons of oilseed now. To be completely Atmanirbhar, we have to double it, or I think go beyond that. We need about 65 million tons of oilseeds if we want to become Atmanirbhar. So I don't see becoming completely Atmanirbhar in the next 5 to 10 years. But yes, we can perhaps reduce the edible oil imports in the next 5 years if we can increase this production of oilseeds to, let's say, 45 million tons, 1.5 times. Let's see how it works. We will have to wait and watch because the mission has been in making for the last 1 year, 1.5 years. It has been delayed. The document is still being finalized. It has to go to the cabinet, then approved. I believe they are going to launch it in the next year or at the time of the budget. Let's see what happens at that time. Your second question was on GM. Now, any technology which we can have must be used. And GM is as good as any other technology. In fact, in soybean, it has done wonders as it's being understood by the industry and by everybody else in US, Brazil, and Argentina. We have not adopted it. There are pros and cons. There are views and views. One view is that this is our USP. We can export very little soybean meal. Whatever we are exporting is only because completely non-GM. And countries like Europe, developed world, wants a non-GM soybean meal and soybean products for food use. Japan, particularly Japan, Korea, France use a lot of non-GM soybean meal, Canada, US. So these are big markets, but we are not able to tap a lot of them because we don't have the soybean meal. So that's the USP. The other point is if we introduce GM, our productivity will go up. Now that's a very million-dollar question whether it will go up or not, because I believe currently the biggest problem in productivity is because of extension. Unless we have the proper practices by the farmers and get the proper input supply and seeds available to him, the productivity, even if you bring GM seed, how will the productivity go up if the farmer does not use the right seed or he does not use the proper practices? That's the question. Currently, the GM available is only herbicide tolerant, which is very suitable for large farms, 1,000, 2,000 hectares in the US and Brazil, Argentina. There, the wage rate is $11 per hour. Now, our farm size average is 2 acres, 2.5 acres. In that scenario, the bringing in ST Roundup Ready only for soybean will help, but how much, I don't know, I can't say. Because the damage from weeds is estimated to be between 15 to 20%. The damage from bad seed is about 25 to 30%. Not use of inputs or other damage is again 20%. So we have a mix of why the damage takes place. But if we had a BT soybean, or we had a soybean genetically modified, which is tolerant to either excess rain or no rain or drought, that will be a huge boon. So let's see, when we do have these, I think we should introduce any technology which is available. We cannot keep away from technology. The third question was about the crop numbers. I'll have to hold it because I have my meeting tomorrow and I'll have to release my numbers at that time. But I would say Atulji normally is always right.
Okay. So, Pathakji, just one, I guess, question on what you said about the GM technology. There's always a debate that if we have enough safeguards around the GM technology, that people don't take it to a very different level, which becomes harmful to the consumers as well. So, GM has been very successful in certain countries, European, US, well, some of the countries altogether. But I think they have the framework to safeguard the consumers from any harm that could come from it. Would you think that, I guess, India is ready for GM technology, given that there could be perceived lack of safeguards around how the technology can be used by some of the private players?
See, we've seen the example of cotton. It was bought in. It resulted in huge increase in productivity of cotton. Now, of course, again, the cotton is becoming immune to the GM. Now, another BT is coming. Another set of genetic engineering has been done. And the use of pesticides has actually increased than decreased. It may happen in soybean also. And if it is used properly by at the level of corporates, I would say, not at the level of farmers, then I believe it will help. But again, I think we should have GM soybean with characteristics which are suitable to us. Our major problem is excess rain, major problem is weather, and our major problem is seed and input supply. So if we can lick those problems, then GM may perhaps help quite a lot if used in a very, very controlled environment. Because India is a huge country, as I said, and if it's not controlled, on the other aspect of health and genetic engineering, that's a very debatable and very, very controversial subject. I don't want to develop on that.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Pathakji. Thank you again for your views on the sector. Atulji, I would come back to you. I think there's a question from audience. Girish Aveli raised a question. I would just read it out. There was never any restriction on buying directly from farmers. You just had to apply to the government. Will Adani be buying directly from farmer for its 100% procurement this year, setting up, I guess, post, but I think more like infrastructure all over. So would that be something that Adani would look at this year in terms of increasing its farmer procurement across all commodities?
Well, we are definitely open to farmer procurement. In fact, in quite a few of our plants, we've already put out banners and we've already circulated that on the WhatsApp and the social media as well, that farmers can come directly to our factories and we will definitely be buying from them. It makes a lot of sense. And there's no reason why we should not be buying. Because at the end of the day, buying in the mandi means you incur all those expenditures which are levied in the mandi, plus the adatia or the commission agent has to be paid. And then the goods again have to travel all the way to the factory. So it makes eminent sense that if we can cut down on all these expenditures, at the end of the day, farmers' realization is definitely going to go up. Because all these expenditures which are happening in the mandi, who's bearing it? The poor farmers actually bearing it. And I'm surprised, why should the farmer be agitating? So that is one of the reasons why you don't see agitation actually happening apart from Punjab and Haryana in any other state. And in Punjab and Haryana, you have state procurement of almost something like 97 or 98%. The wheat and rice is all procured by the government. So that's the fundamental issue. So I see no reason, and we would definitely be encouraging more and more buying directly from the farmers. And this is, and on the GM, I would like to add to what Pathakji said. In fact, I was very, very pleasantly surprised at Pathakji's much more open admission that they would not be opposing technology. I think let the option be with the farmer whether they want to adopt GM or not GM. And as far as health is concerned, let me just share with you that we've been on cotton for a very long time, and all the cotton meal which goes in the cattle feed is all genetically modified. And we've been drinking the milk of Amul and all these guys, and our health is showing no signs of problem. So we welcome seed, we welcome technology, and whatever technology can possibly help India improve its productivity.
Great. Thank you, Atulji. And I think Pathakji had mentioned at the beginning of the conference as well that his views will be more direct in this particular webinar, and we welcome that, Pathakji. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now I just wanted to invite Prashant Mishra ji. So Prashant, I think we went through your introduction earlier. I think there was some connectivity issue. But what we wanted to pick your brain, Prashantji, was just a few questions looking at, given that ITC is a major buyer on the soybean front, and what do you see as the effect of the current COVID crisis on the edible oil, particularly given that you're looking at buying on the soybean side? And just the views on the market, both near and medium term, what do you see as the impact is going to be?
Yeah, good afternoon. I think Atul sir has already covered the edible oil portion. But in the COVID, during the lockdown, we have seen the very good demand in the consumer packed oil, especially all the soft oil, especially soybean, mustard, and the sunflower oil. So going forward also, we are very positive. The demand in the edible oil segment will be grow. And our industry also totally depend currently on the domestic production and the domestic edible oil. So I think the overall industry point of view also and the crushing point of view also, this is a very good sign for the industry. Ki demand on the packed, especially in the packed edible oil is very good, and all the consumer is, because of the lockdown also, all consumer is looking for the good and healthy edible oil. This is a very good sign for the industry. Coming to the medium terms, you are asking me for the price outlook or this key, like Pathakji also says key crop size between 10 to 10.5, 10.05. So our estimate also the crop will remain in the range of between 10 million or 10.05 million only. Because yeah, definitely there is an increase over the last year, but because of the late rains in especially in MP, there is a damage in crop and yield loss also we have seen. But overall crop will be better from the last year. But weather will play the key role in the coming days also, not over in India, but in the South American country also. In last week also we have seen the market has increased also. So there is we can say the price range between 37,000 to 39,000 range bound Indian market we can see in the over the last 2-3 months.
What is your estimate of crop, Prashantji?
Sir, around 10 million.
Okay.
Rajasthan and Maharashtra is good, sir. The only problem we are looking in the Maharashtra, in MP only, especially from central India, from Bhopal to Indore, there is a problem in damage and yield loss also. But overall crop is better than the last year.
Sure.
One more. Sorry, Pathakji, go ahead.
The area is also 10% higher than last year. So the damage has been offset by higher area overall and much better productivity in Maharashtra. We will see how much the crop is going to be, but I have to hold my numbers till tomorrow.
We'll look forward to tomorrow's presentation. Prashantji, one more question to ask you. Given the new farm gate reforms that have come in, what is the change in procurement strategy at ITC for the coming season? And also, is ITC looking at more investments closer to farm gates to facilitate the farmer procurement in the near term or for the long-term strategy as well?
Sir, we are the first company who started the direct farmers buy in long back.
Yeah.
And we all our infrastructure is there. We have a Chopal Sahagar and in the village network is there. And for the last 10 years, we are fighting with the government to come out this amendment to farmers can sell anyone in the plant or any trader or at the warehouse level also, or and in the cold storage if you want to sell to the. This is, I think, is a very welcome step taken by the central government, and this will help not only the farmers but also the industries also. And we are also trying to do the maximize this year our farmers buying to help out the farmers and maximize the to support the farmers for we are fighting for last 10 years. I think every industry has welcomed this step. In the long term also it will benefit both the not only for the government point of view but also the industry, farmers and all the stakeholder of the agri commodities.
So Prashantji, then I guess the fight that with the government that ITC has had, does all of that get addressed with the farm gate reforms, or there are still open points that ITC is still presenting in front of the government?
I think, sir, now the only 2 or 3 states is fighting against this ordinance. Other state is all the welcome. And if the farmers is willing to sell product to the anyone in the his territory and he want to willing to sell to the plant also, I think there is no question should be raised why can't farmers will sell material to the others also. So we are fully support with the government stand, and we always maximize buying our through the farmers only this year.
I had a point on government policies, particularly MSP. Now, may I continue?
Yes, please, Patilji, please.
This MSP-driven regime, particularly for those crops where the mandatory procurement is not there, I am completely foxed. You want me to buy soybean at 3,880 rupees per quintal. And I have no control over what price my meal will sell, and I don't know what price the oil will sell. Now, in all prudence, how can an industry be expected to buy his raw material at a fixed price by somebody else and then have no control over what he sells? So if I can only get, let's say, 3,500 rupees by selling oil and meal, how would I buy at 3,880 rupees? Now, in the time of distress, I'm sure the farmer must be helped. Like this year, the drought or whatever conditions, then the state must help, and there are ways to help him. Pay him some cash or pay him the difference, but asking the industry or expecting the industry to pay the minimum support price or a higher price or have this all kind of agitations, the farmer should get 5,000 rupees, 4,000 rupees. I think the thing has to work together. If Mr. Atul Jadave cannot make money out of crushing soybean, why will he buy? And how will he buy? Even if he buys, what will he do with it? So if the government wants to support the farmers in the time of distress, the right way to do is to, you are giving so much money in all ways, give him by way of price support system, price support scheme. Sorry. The government entering into buying, let's say, mustard or soybean or groundnut through NAFED, through their price support system, the Agriculture Ministry, is to use a stronger word. He buys it at today's price or at MSP, but there is no market at that price. Ultimately, the mustard or groundnut or the soybean has to go to me, to Atul Jadave. Now, he still can't buy it. So you buy it 4,000 rupees, then sell it to him at 3,500 rupees, you lose the money. Rather than losing the money in this way, and then corruption, and then huge losses in storage and warehousing, give that difference by way of cash to the farmer. Let the industry work on the basis of the balancing of the input and output. And let the market forces work as far as the industry is concerned. That's what I wanted to say.
No, what Pathakji said, can I add into that?
Of course, Atul.
What Pathakji says is absolutely true, but let me add one more angle to it. My take would be that for far too long, we have used MSP as a tool to increase production. My take would be that you should also start using it to cut down on production, which is not wanted by the country, and use it for commodities which actually the country wants.
Yes.
And the sensible thing would be to give the bhavantar or whatever
Price
difference
support
is,
yes.
and that will, and if you make MSP mandatory, which is what one of the demand I keep hearing on the television these days is, if you make it mandatory, then you would end up having government as the biggest buyer of all the agri commodities, 23 to be precise, which have MSP. And mind you, if the government is going to be buying 23 commodities, you can be sure you are in for big time trouble, and the private sector would all be elbowed out, and government will be storing it, and you will be storing 100 tons, and by the time the damn thing comes out, it will be 80 tons. So
Yes.
the option is there with you.
Yeah.
That's all from my side.
Atul sir and Pathak ji what says ki MSP should be applicable only for the government, not the industry or the private player. We should operate.
No, and Prashant, I'll go beyond that. As Atul said, why not use the MSP as a tool to disincentive for paddy and wheat farmers in Punjab? Paddy and wheat, the land in Punjab is all going bad. In the next 15 years, if they don't stop growing paddy, wheat, you will find not only agitation, you will find a lot of suicide, hundreds of suicides, because the land is going barren there. So there, you don't buy paddy and wheat and MSP. The farmer is then switch to some other crop, or he will at least start rotating the crop. So this MSP tool can be used both ways, and it should be used.
As a disincentive, absolutely.
Yes.
Atulji, one follow-up question on that. Then how do you see government procurement planning out for the next few years? Because I think the way you presented it, ideally the government procurement should come down over a period of time, and the private procurement, either to facilitate government procurement, should keep going up. So private parties could facilitate for the government. Hopefully that will reduce the deficit as well, because if they're buying high and selling low eventually, that they do for some of the commodities, that could actually help the state level and the center level as well. But wanted to get your views and Pathakji's views on that as well.
Now, the only trouble in all this is that in India, we don't take economic decisions. We take political decisions. And as long as wheat and rice is going to be very, very, very heavily taxed in those states of North India, private sector procurement in that part of the world is just not going to happen. In fact, the funny part is, I'm told, and we have some experience on that, wheat from UP and rice from UP actually moves to Punjab to be given to the government. So it doesn't make sense. So which means the MSP, or the way it has evolved over a period of time, needs a solid tweaking. And that would mean Punjab and Haryana, their own taxation needs to come to the level of other states. For private sector to come into those states, obviously that is why you don't see any industry as far based on wheat or rice flourishing big time in Punjab. Rice maybe, but wheat, there is practically no flour mill which is flourishing in that part of the world, because the cost of procurement is very prohibitively high. So I think both the center and the states will have to find a via media which ensures that the revenue of the state is practically taken care of. But as far as how the government procurement is going to continue in the future, I think in the near future, MSP regime for wheat and rice is not going to go anywhere. But gradually, it has to keep coming down. And obviously, in fact, let me share with you something very interesting, which may be interesting to the audience as well. In some of the, I believe that's in Turkey or some other European country, whatever the private sector procures and stores, and whenever the government wants, other way around, the government procures and stores, and gives it to the private sector on a regular basis with the condition that when I want, I'll give you 3 months notice and you give it back to me for the state reserves. So what really happens is during season time, procurement actually happens. And when the season is over, the usage is from the same stocks. And then when you need the stocks, you can jolly well, the next season is very much there. So which means you are not actually storing wheat much beyond what you actually require. In fact, this is a throwback of the socialist era and the 60s PL 480, which is still continuing, though it has frankly outlived its utility. There's no point in keeping on producing wheat, producing it this year and then consuming it 3 years later. It doesn't make sense. Absolutely.
With the 7% loss in between from FCI storage and rats and rodents and whatnot.
Yeah.
I would like to add Sunur on that MSP piece. I've been hearing it's a very good discussion. So what our understanding is that the MSP concept which is there is basically from a government perspective is not an economical decision. That's sure which Atulji has to. But if you take the legacy from 1960s, from there when we were actually deficit, and we had no food grains to even serve people, and that point of time, Prime Minister Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri told that you have to have only one-time meal for others to have feed. So that fear is still having a hangover on us, and that's perfectly right in a sense. Is that if you see the COVID condition which has happened, which is a black swan in terms of it happens in a centuries. The reality is that the people are not having food, 2 meals a day to serve their families. So that challenge is there. As a government, our responsibility is as a government's responsibility is not to make money, but to ensure that people are have basic things and at least 2 times a meal to you survive. Here where the difference comes is that if you run this policy for a long time, there is a cross subsidization which happens. So industry want it to be open, and where 80-90 crore of people are there, they want it to be closed because they know that they cannot survive if it is primarily open. So it's a sort of a catch-22 position that how it will happen. If we see, it may not be in a sense, if you see the bouquet of what the government does. So if a direct implication of any commodity, you see that why the MSP has been increased, why it has not been, why it is not decreased, why the prices are lower. So the impact may not be in a way a direct, but there are huge indirect impacts. I will give you an example of a soybean. The current MSP is around 380 or something like that, around 700. If you see the return on investment or return on equity for a farmer, it is around 50%. So if you invest in that, you get 50%. Now, if you compare with other commodities, so you compare with pearl millet, you compare with Cajanus or a pigeon pea or a arahar or maize or a black gram, it is more than 60%, 65%. Now, you can ask, if you are getting this much of a return, why should somebody grow a soybean? Or what? So if you compare again with a wheat and paddy, the reason is the production concept which is required in those commodities and the production concept required in other commodities and the water availability, all these things makes it easier for farmer to do and move away with 30 days of work in a field. So if you compare, still that would be around 60%. So number one. Number two, they also know that if they grow soybean, pearl millet, Cajanus, they do not know that MSP center will be opened in that area or not. So as a process, I think the government should be open to buy with the 3 new schemes of, I think, PM ASA scheme is there, which is, so that may happen that, people may shift to, producing other commodities at that location if with where, higher returns on investments are there for them. So I think what is happening is that when the soybean has to be purchased, government is opening centers only in MP. At that point of time, the economics comes into play. They are not going to open it in Punjab and Haryana. If they have to, Nefert has to buy mustard, he goes to Sri Ganganagar, or in Rajasthan, they buy some, mustard out there, moves off. So if anybody, if they want that cluster approach to happen, so I will request industry players to say that if the cluster approach has to happen, you will have to ask the central government, state government to be available. So if some farmer can carry the stock to the factory, he can carry the stock to, maybe multiple locations. You open it for a time period of 6 months. So other important point is that that period is quite small. So you open it for a farmer that whenever he wants to buy, there is one buyer which is standing. Then what happens is, then the market prices will be in line with what MSP is. So in any mandi, if you see the cart, so how does it work is, the MSP centers are open on 15th of March. They get closed on 15th of April, or by 31st of by 31st of April everything is over. If you have sold it, sold it. If you not sold it, not sold it. After that, if any farmer comes in or long-term duration varieties are there, then there is no buyer for it. So you'll have to sell it at a lower price. That is where 15 days or 20 days in a bucket, the whole thing is what. So my basic understanding is, government has taken all these 3 form steps, which are really great. And if you see in total the various steps which has been taken by governments on a different stages, they have been in line with the thought process of that, the improvement in returns, cluster-based approach, moving from wheat and rice, uses of per drop per crop, or difference of the prices which are to be given, that PDPS scheme, then private partnership with public-private partnership, then the physical procurements. So all these things in total, when you take it, I think they are decent. One challenge which everybody faces, so in a private sector, or we all are in a private sector, so decisions are quite fast. We are fully dependent upon the economical decisions. We don't take primarily only social decisions. There may be a CSR activity which would be happening, but our economic decisions and CSR decisions are different. Whereas the priority in case of government becomes more of a social responsibility than. So on this point, that always creates in a mind that it's good or bad. And I am of view that some part of control in terms of any industry should be with the government. Although there are views that doing business and monitoring, they two should be separate. Government should not be into business, they should be only monitoring. But the point is that if they are not in the business, when they are monitoring, then they say that industry is suffering loss. So sorry, I am quite different in a way from thought process, but I think that is required from the population of 150 crore people walking on the streets of India. It's not easy, it's difficult, and they need to be fed. So this is a small piece which on the MSP piece which my
what you're saying is perfectly all right, but the only thing I would add to whatever you said is, whatever decision the government or the government functionaries take, they should largely be economic and not totally political in nature. If they start doing that, possibly much more sensible approach might emerge, and they might be able to take mid-course correction. MSP was relevant when it was introduced. It certainly was, because the Green Revolution would not have happened if MSP was not there. But then, as we know, as we attain 58 years of age or 60 years of age, we have to superannuate. So it's high time some of those things actually have to superannuate. And maybe the sell-by date is over. So we've got to probably tweak our systems and our processes and our policies a lot more. In fact, I would say the farm reforms are a step in that right direction. Otherwise, we should have been happy with the Hindu rate of growth of about 1-2%. That's about it. And the urban-centric approach would have continued. So I think probably for the first time we are seeing a lot more rural-centric approach happening. That's all from my side. Yeah.
Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, KM. So KM, I think that was a segue to now go to you in terms of a few questions. I guess the key aspect always of any commodity supply chain is financing. But in addition to commodity financing, wanted to get Yes Bank's perspective on how, one is the view on soybean in particular, as to how the banks view soybean supply chain, commodity financing, the structures that the bank is looking at, and if there are new ones that are coming up to facilitate the supply chain financing even more. And lastly, one more question where we would invite your views is to look at, with the Farm Bill reforms coming in, how is the bank looking at agri infra investing as well, or agri infra lending in particular, in a larger way? So could be farm gate infrastructure, could be larger procurement centers, could be similar to financing each of our centers as well. Maybe other corporates are looking at it. So have you seen the queries being different to the bank in terms of how infra plays different as compared to prior to the Farm Bill modifications as well? So over to you, Kane.
Yeah, sure. So 3-4 questions are there. So if I miss some, you can re-ask, Sunil.
Sure,
so every year, as a bank, also just like an industry, we also have our own view in terms of how much funding we have to do to the industry. And from last 5, 7, 8 years, we have been doing with different players. We also analyze in terms of what would be the production size, what is the risk associated with this commodity. Are there any government implication in terms of if there is a change in a policy, and various risks associated with it. So normally in any agri value chain, we identify as a pre-harvest and the post-harvest activities, and we have the product for each of them. So to directly come on what's our view on a commodity and what is the risk associated with it is normally, as Atulji and Prashant, and I think they both have, our numbers are also around same, around 10 million metric tons of production, which we are keeping in view. The challenge with us internally when discussion happens is that we have a neutral party who doesn't know about a soybean or any agri commodity, but he can ask any questions. That gives a very open-ended type of a thought to any supply chain. So there is a query that when he comes and reads up and says that there is a USDA, then there is a government, then there is a state government, then there is a trade body. The difference in the production, comes from 8.5 million metric tons to 13.5 million metric tons. Depending upon the time at which you are having a meeting. So with a production of around maximum production which can happen in India or ever would have happened is around 12 million metric tons. And with 20% here and there, it's very difficult to determine for us in terms of, what would be the price actually when it will be opening. Soybean, we as feel is not as complex as, rice and paddy, where we have so much varietal differences, the price ranging from, one end of 16 rupees to a range of, 40 rupees. That makes our, work much, much easier when you, start doing a value chain financing for rice and paddy or any other spices product where the prices are quite different. So that is the comfort, which we have. On a perspective on a full value chain of soybean, we divide into 4 parts, where the farmer becomes, a supplier, where we can directly go and fund to the farmers or KCC. Any bank, including Yes Bank, has a KCC product where you can go and fund it. Then comes the the buyer, maybe then the processor, and then the end consumer. So we in any agri value chain. The industry which is there is heavily requires a capex, and inventories are also quite high at end of March. So on a balance sheet size basis, when we say compared to any non-agri segment, there is always a pressure on the balance sheet, and that is where makes bankers discomfort. I'm not saying to tell that that's very bad or good, but I'm telling you the perspective from where how the banks think. So it becomes very difficult for any sales guy or a relationship manager to answer to this guy. Why? So his capex was this much, his return on that equity is this much, and inventories are quite high, and it's very dangerous sign why he has not been able to sell it off. So we'll have to convey to the side that this is a kharif crop, comes in the month of around October, November. There is stocking, the full season requirement is there. So that is the challenge across in agri sector, and in a soya it is different. Other view which as an yes bank we think is there is a large segment of seed processors, so which are into a mid market size companies or SME companies. So we feel that we are quite safe in terms of funding to them. The reason being that there is a direct agreement between the farmer and that company, and the government also has given you a contractual obligation of producing that, and that has to go into the farm. So that makes us very comfortable in a sense, because there is a chain which is there. One other comfort which we have, and which I think with the coming farm bill applications, and with ITC, Adani, and various other small and mid-sized players coming for directly procurement for the farmer, would be that when so till now what has happened is that it was very, very difficult for us in terms of dealing with a produce which is at the farmer end, giving him the safety, so the price risk resides with someone, and fund it to the farmer. So I don't know I'm able to convey it out. So again I will tell you this. The structure is, it was very difficult for me to go and fund to the farmer on a commodity, and then not having any player to buy that commodity means that there is a price risk which the farmer is carrying. Now we have proposed some structure even in the to the government, in a sense that there should be some structure where the government is this is in relation to the MSP which we discussed. Government should be standing to buy at a MSP at any point of time, and we give fund to the farmer, and if he wants to take a price risk, that price risk can be averted by the safety net product of MSP, or if the prices go up, there is an industry which it will buy. So this is one product which we are thinking that can work wonders with the new changes in the farm bill. So this is about the other aspects of the risk which we see is about the production of the meal. So if you see in the pre-COVID, so Jan, Feb, and March, we fund approximately a good poultry companies. So almost all of them had very, very difficult in terms of any form of payments. Normally this product soybean is around 60% of it goes as a meal. So and total cost of the poultry, which is there, around 75 to 80% is the cost of the raw material, and rest 20%, around 10 to 15% is the margin which goes to the any poultry player. So what has happened is that they were stuck with corn as well as the soybean, and due to this, they were, and on the other side, the poultry was unable to get sold into the market because of various misconceptions of getting infected due to eating of that poultry. So what has happened is that demand has come down by around 65 to 70%, and almost all poultry players had to basically, like a farmer burns the crop, they have to dump their product, especially the live birds, and leave it in the field, because they were unable to feed, and the prices from, if I will say, from 120 to 140 rupees have brought down to 30 or 40 rupees. So that that was the challenge. So when such thing happens, it's very difficult for a banker in a black swan moment to how to cater to such challenges. So this is where, so this year with now what we have seen is that demand for even soybean is almost 80-90% of pre-COVID days. So, and even the prices of the boiler and the chicken and everything has, around 80-90% of pre-COVID time, which we see. So we feel now much more comfortable. Or most of the players have, incurred losses. Most of the poultry players and the user of the commodities have incurred losses, but they are going to surely come out of it, I feel. So this is another aspect which bank takes care of it, because the soybean industry in India is dependent more on the soya meal in terms of having the crush margins and calculations and everything. So this is another aspect which we look into. Yes, and one more thing or two more things. Uh, as Atulji told that China is one of the largest buyer in terms of, I think, more than 40-50% of the stocks which are produced across the globe. China is one of the buyers. In India, we are quite low in terms of 2.5 to 3% of the total production of the world. So we are not one of the major players in terms of our production, and this can happen only through the various incentives of the government, and maybe a new green revolution, which a sort of a green revolution in terms of pulse and as it comes up. Uh, but so we don't currently have any opportunities in terms of exporting it, because our prices are quite high, than the international market. But I think the duty of processors or the industry players, I think Adani and all big players will be certainly hedging their produce, but most of the SMEs and the smaller players do not, hedge their produce. So which the bankers also, want when I'm taking a sort of a call on the inventory, which is around 60-70% of your, total turnover and everything. I want that, product to be hedged, but still in India, that hedging concept has, not come up. So, when the hedging doesn't come up and the margins are quite low, it's very difficult, to analyze for any independent risk body in terms of using. So, but overall, on a agri side, we see soya as a more simpler product than most of the products, and we are quite gung-ho about funding to the soya on an annual and on every basis. So, small input from my side.
Great.
Singh Saab, I have a question for you.
Sir.
What stops the financier, in this case, say for example, Yes Bank, from hedging their risk for the financing which they have done for soya? Is there any statutory prohibition against your hedging? So if you all can hedge your risk yourself, and then because the goods are lying under your name and under your lock and key, so why can't you just hedge your risks? So that means the banks also need to improve their own commercial acumen.
Sir, two things on it. One is one is on a commodity piece where the stock is lying on my side and I can hedge it. So there are various players in terms of their processors where I've given WCDL or a working capital limit or CC limit. There's only the stock which the stock reports which come to us on a quarterly basis, depending upon customer to customer.
I don't think the banks are allowed to hedge, Tulji. I don't think the banks are allowed to hedge on the stock.
So I was coming on that. So
that's what I was asking him. Are the banks?
They're not allowed.
Yeah. So banks currently, I think there is a 6 months back, the one circular has come where we are going to be allowed in terms of hedging the produce.
Exactly.
And once that comes into picture, I think most of the banks will have the commodity desk, and that also opens an opportunity for a bank. So, for example, if I'm doing a LC based or an import or an export, as of today, we push depositor, a borrower basically, to hedge its risk and share some data with us. But once that is allowed and that comes into picture, I think most of the banks will be either doing themselves or they will asking the depositor to do it. So what happens is that bank is a service arm. So I can hedge it, but the cost and everything, goes to the depositor or the borrower. I think that is where that mindset requires to be changed. So if you go internationally into US, Brazil, where large shipments happen, I think nothing is honest. Or even big companies like Adani and Gujarat and Boja, they surely has it. There is no doubt about it. So we'll have to wait for some more time. But I'm very positive in terms of that once that day comes, almost all banks will have the hedging desk for
So what? So in future, the traders can have a job in the banks as well, right?
yeah.
There is
Traders can
somebody
have a
asking for a
job in a
job on
bank
this.
anything.
Good.
Traders can take over.
Atulji, somebody is asking for a
I
job right
I
there in
think
the webinar.
almost so in a sugar company. So other important point is that there are two. So it came to my mind because I've been a part of earlier days managing collaterals for various. So what happens is that in India the exchanges liquidity are quite less, even if you see in soybean. So it comes for a certain time period, then it goes off. So in my previous organization for the government of India, we were hedging the wheat and in Chicago CVOT. Whereas here no liquidity was there, and around I remember it was a good saving of around 100 crores for the government of India in a short span of 1.5 months. So that was a test which was operated. I don't know currently it is running or not, but that was a test which was operated. So even if the RBI allows, it will have to allow it even to hedge it on the external exchanges where the liquidity is there. So I think that would be surely taken care of. So in a sugar, if you see, the 5-6 years back, I've not tracked sugar from last 2 to 3 years because there was no portfolio in terms of large portfolio for us. But sugar has almost all big sugar companies have a hedging desk. So the amount of sugar which a sugar company produces and sells it is only 1/10 of what a guy sitting on a desk hedges and makes money for the sugar company. So this is how it has got changed, and especially good companies. I'm talking about a very good company. So this is only going to happen. So it's just we'll have to wait for a time. We have waited for the farm bill for 30 years. I think even a small time should be allowed to the government for taking that call.
I would just want to correct you in one place.
Yes,
Most
sir.
of the corporates feel that hedging is a way of making money. It is not.
It is
only to cover your risks. And that's about it. So the reason why you have so much of mortality in people who play around on the exchanges is they start treating the exchanges as a way of making money.
Tool. Yeah.
So it doesn't work that way.
Sure. Fully agree with that, sir. I know that. So you have said it on the bank. So they also use that tool actually to make money, which should not be the concept in terms of making money. So on every evening, if you ask to a guy who's sitting on a desk how much money you have made it puts him under pressure.
Sam, I have a question. You said RBI is going to allow the banks to hedge. I have my doubts because, of course, the act can be amended, Banking Regulation Act. But as a concept, if every lender were allowed to hedge on the stocks on which he has lended, I think the whole system of working, financing separate and trading separate will change, and it will be all topsy-turvy. So, how sure are you that the RBI will allow the banks to hedge on the stock on which they have lent money?
So you are right. So it's very difficult. So there are two sides of opinion. That is where from last 3 to 5 years there has been small changes which has been done. But in terms of exactly asking and allowing, I think it has not been done. These are the reasons, because so you do not know. So what happens to the small player? What happens to the SME? What happens to the bigger player? Will the bigger players kill it because of that? Will the banks their process of in terms of lending, will that go for a change? Will it impact the holding? All these things will come into picture. So we are waiting for that circular.
There will be conflict of interest if the banks were allowed
correct.
to.
That's the challenge.
Conflict of interest with business, and which is not the bank's prime job or a bank's job at all. So I have my doubts if allowed to hedge on the stock finance.
So international banks, I think, are allowed where this is the concept which comes in, that internationally, if I am doing a shipment of around 400 crores, why should not be allowed? So banks internationally, few of the banks are allowed to do it. Not in India. So international banks are
I
allowed.
think Atulji will know. Internationally, Atulji.
Of course, banks are allowed worldwide.
So
We are hedging on Chicago, we are hedging on KLC, we are hedging everywhere.
Exactly.
And the RBI also gives. The trouble with India is we are a great debating society. We keep debating till the cows come home, and by the time we are able to take decision, it is 30, 40 years. So these farm laws, which should have actually happened.
You said political
30 years back, we are doing it now.
Yeah, you said
we are a great debating society.
We take.
Addition to it, what happens is that there are two things. One is that in India, bank size is quite small. Second thing, that political will. You do not know if you allow, what will happen. If you take that decision, multiple people will, stand against you. So it becomes very difficult in terms, and nothing is going wrong, because suppose the government doesn't take a decision, it is not impacting anyway, in a sense. So you are continuing with what has been, done. So once you make this reform, this is a big reform which will happen. So it becomes, so it's better to, postpone such decisions unless and until it becomes very imperative and very, very important in terms of a balance sheet, even for the government, to make such decisions, or, directly catering to, large population out here. Else, all such decisions, I think, will, get postponed, and will come only with a small tweaking changes where there will be a twist in a tail at the end, and it will not be, open playfield for any of the financial institutions.
KM, I think one of the questions, I guess, to address that is from the audience. So a good friend of the industry, Siddharth Amin, he has asked a question: why not the banks enforce the hedge on the borrowers as an indirect tool? So the banks cannot hedge it, maybe, but say, for example, if ABCD Corporation is holding 100 crores of soybean, why doesn't the Yes Bank force the hedge on ABCD Corporation to hedge on the exchange, so that the bank doesn't suffer the losses in case of the price volatility? And that will probably address one more question, I think, which was on the Q&A session. That could lead to you reducing the margin requirement on the financing as well. So instead of soybean being a 30% margin product, if the hedge is forced, that could allow the margin could reduce to, I don't know, maybe 10%. So your thoughts on that?
Right. So we have been in touch with the exchanges, and so what happens is that when I fund the larger players, the bigger players, basically the corporates or the companies which are more than 500 crores of a turnover, they have in some way, a hedging mechanism. As a process, till today, the banks have not been very, forceful in terms of, asking the people to hedge. What happens is that, to be very direct in terms of, and to be real to it, how we are saved is that, we have got 30% of margin. So if I go internally and, ask that margin to be decreased and somebody hedging, it requires me to have, full system in place for monitoring that the guy who, I have funded is monitoring or not. And on daily basis, I need to have an MIS. So, for all those customers, which...
but KM, one question though, so isn't it time that we complicate some things to make the other things easier? Like, I think if we have taken a simpler approach in the past, that simpler methodology is that, okay, we do 30% margin, the bank is safeguarded. But if you think from, say, the borrower's perspective, maybe he's happy to pay for the 0.1% or 0.2% of hedging cost, whatever X% of hedging cost. On the other flip side, I'll get my margin reduced to, say, 10%. So I know it complicates for short term, but that complication is short term. Is it beneficial and simpler for long term?
Yeah, yes, Ruud, you're right. So what happens, that's what I'm telling, means, so for a short-term funding, when we are doing a short-term funding, maybe of 90 days or, 60 days or 90 days or 120 days, we need to have a proper desk for it, for monitoring. So if I am decreasing the margin, the banks need to have a proper desk of monitoring any if any condition which is put in the credit approval memorandum. So unless until I have that proper mechanism in a sense, and that too, if a yes bank comes in and asks, pushes some industry player which is between, say, so all SMEs or below 500 crores with a cost, the approach from the borrower is that, sir, boss, nobody has asked me till now. You are the only bank who has come forward in terms of asking that. And that extra cost of 0.10, 0.20 at that point of, because he will also have to have a desk. He cannot, so bank will only monitor that desk, but he will have to have that hedging desk in terms of asking. So it cannot happen with a one bank as a process. So we have, as a process, means all private sector banks and the exchanges have been communicating for last 2 years in terms of pushing this. But what it cannot happen with a one bank. It has to happen in as a community. So if a yes bank asks, if other banks, Axis, ICICI, and other private sector banks ask, this can happen. And this will only happen is that when there is a regulatory requirement in terms of pushing that you need to hedge it as a part of a strategy. So then only it can grow. So only as a one side yes bank asking to a customer, it becomes a difficult task in terms of getting that deal from customer. For us, the prime focus still remains that I fund an asset. For a borrower, what happens is that he wants to fund an asset. He wants to have increased so less haircut. So there is always a sort of a discussion and negotiations of decreasing the margins, decreasing the haircuts, and so as a banker, as a relationship guy, I have two bias for it. One is a borrower, and another is the risk side. So when I go, he will say that how we are going to monitor, what is the desk, how the price falls. So it becomes very difficult for us to answer. So normally everything boils down then for decreasing of a margin to a credit profile of a borrower. So good credit profile borrower, we fund with a 15% of margin. So as of today, yes, as a yes bank, we are quite open. Even other banks are quite open. But because from the top, from the regulator, there is no strict forward laws in terms of asking that to happen mandatorily. It is a difficult task in terms to have a one size fit all for asking all of them to hedge.
Sure.
So it will surely happen, but may not be very quickly.
Okay. But the key takeaway is that the banks need to shore up their commodity desks, and there has to be somebody to start belling the cat first, and maybe Yes Bank could lead the way.
Yeah, sure. Atulji, take it.
So maybe that's a good segue, and thank you for your views. That's a good segue to invite Brajji to the discussion as well. I think we've discussed some policy matters, some financing. Maybe now, I guess, Brajji, your views on how a service provider can actually supplement all the strengths and the weaknesses as well, as to how we can use some of the structural weaknesses or the strengths where we can strengthen the soybean ecosystem. Are there any trade or trade finance structures that can supplement the credit limits for some of the processors in the market? And of course, what else can Origo provide to the industry where it can support the system? Over to you, Brajji. Brajji, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Sunodji. It is a wonderful discussion. I think I was so happy to listen to Atulji and other panelists since last one and a half year, one and a half hour, I think. And I would like to also share here that some of the students from Utkal University, along with their faculty, they requested me to join this forum. Probably they must be having a good knowledge takeaway from this forum. I'm also seeing that some of the government officials, somebody from CWC, Mr. Chadha, is interacting, and even from the other forums. So many senior people are there among the participants also. So good to listen and learn a lot from the learned speakers till now. As far as the supply chain and ecosystem and role of service provider is concerned, I would like to highlight that we have seen, I think I am in this industry since last 15, 20 years, worked as a banker in post-harvest management and in input industry also. So what my takeaway has been that this supply chain of agri commodity is, I can say, evolving or transforming from inefficient and fragmented infrastructure to the efficient and integrated approach now. When I'm saying inefficient, I can say with one example, like as Atulji earlier already mentioned that farmers are getting hardly 1/4 of whatever the ultimate product is being sold. And there was a study like in India, farmers are getting hardly 30-35% of the ultimate farmers prices. So, and in developed country, I think producers are getting almost 65 to 70%. So compare that with India, I think 30-35% to 60-65%. I think there is an inefficiency lying in the system. So, and similarly, the approach was fragmented. If I have seen in last 15-20 years that suppose somebody want to buy, a trader or any company who want to trade, say in soybean, so he has to deal with multiple agencies. Like he has to talk to the warehouses who are arranging their warehousing infrastructure. He has to go and ask somebody to provide finance in case he needs financing. He has to go for some other agency who can test the quality and give the certificate to them. So all these things means whatever he need, that was not available at one place. And when I'm saying that it is transforming into integrated, like today, we like Origo, there are multiple service providers. We are providing all these solutions one stop. And the beauty lies is like service provider, multiple service providers like Origo, we are having presence in entire country. We are present like in 12 states, 650 warehouses, almost 1500 people. We are providing services like warehousing, we have quality testing laboratories, we have tie-up with banks, we are providing even financing facilities also. So as far as somebody, some investor who wanted to invest and trade in any commodity, now these warehouses are becoming the key place. Some we give them that kind of idea. Our presence in 12 states, I can say one example, like somebody in Punjab, he wanted to sell wheat in Tamil Nadu. Another player sitting in Rajasthan, he wanted to sell wheat in, say, Karnataka. And that Karnataka guy want to fix their prices today, but delivery will be happening after 6 months time. So mere presence, pan India, we offer them solution that you buy today from the Rajasthan market, will provide you warehouse space over there, will provide you quality testing service certificate over there, will provide you financing also over there. Whenever you need to shift it to your area, we will provide those timelines and all those services to you. So this is becoming a kind of convenience to the person. If somebody want to trade, he need to focus only on trade. And if you want to compare the earlier problems and I think present solutions, like everywhere, I think the supply chain can be defined in 4 parameters only. It may start, agri supply chain may start from procurement, then warehousing, then financing, and then the market linkage. And market linkage is between, say, buyers and sellers, and buyers, maybe the processing industry and all. SOPA and SEA, those are the industry who are ultimately processing and sending it to the ultimate customers only. Procurement, earlier there was problem that where to buy, what is the quality. Now solutions are available. You can talk to one service provider and then you can ask that this is the place, this is the quality parameter, these are the warehouse rentals, everything can be negotiated one place and the solution is available. We are providing that. There are multiple other service providers also. So customized solutions to all the value chain participants are available in current supply chain, which was a challenge, I think, 15, 20 years back. As far as financing is concerned, probably there was a product. I used to work for IDBI Bank and Axis Bank earlier. There was a product when we used to sell to the customers like CC limit or working capital requirement and all. We know that there are multiple players, multiple corporates who has better management, better understanding of the product. They have capability to create value to all ecosystem partners, provided the finance, additional working capital is available to them. Thanks to the banks, I think in 2003, 2004, they started working on the collateral management model. So when means banks over and above their working capital limits, they started extending some other facilities for this collateral. If collateral is placed under collateral management, and then additional facilities available. Right now, I think in last 4-5 years, even Origo is doing that. We are providing a trade facilitation solutions. That is even more than that. What is this trade facilitation is? If you are exhausted with your bank limit, CC limit and all, if you are exhausted with even your collateral management limit, or if you are feeling some other challenges in that, we are providing you the off-balance sheet kind of funding. We are saying that if you have capability, if you have better understanding, you are a good trader, good company, management is good, all things are good. We will provide you solution that you can trade in our balance sheet. We will keep buy in our balance sheet, and whenever you need, we will deliver that commodity to you. So these are the solutions, I think, and these are the transformations happened in the supply chain, particularly financing, in last 10-15 years only. So these are the solutions coming to us. Warehouses, as Atulji has rightly mentioned, I just want to add one thing to his viewpoint. This new farm bills, they are very good in terms of creating one nation, one market. And I think it would not be unfair to state that these bills may enable warehouse as a marketplace. Let me tell you, the logistic cost for this agri industry is very high. That is taking away a lot of our margins. Farmers are allowed to go to mandi. They will do dumping, auction, everything. There will be pilferages, there will be shortages, there will be some other value cuts over there. Then that will be packed in mandi, will come to the warehouse, and then from warehouse it will go to the ultimate. So multiple handling, multiple transportations, that's a logistic code. Now with this new farm bills, what will happen is warehouse can be treated as a trade area. Farmers can come directly to the warehouse. We will provide that certificate, storage receipt, warehouse receipt, quality certificate, everything. Somebody has asked the question about E&WR also. I think that's the future. If somebody is coming to our warehouse, we have a capability to issue electronic negotiable warehouse receipt also. We have those kind of software available. So with those kind of solutions, E&WR or warehouse receipt is issued, and instead of trading, right now we are trading commodity. We have to show sample and everything. We can think of trading those electronic negotiable warehouse receipt later on. Whoever wanted to buy, farmer will bring his commodity to a warehouse, he will get the certificate, and then he can sell those certificates. Sale and buy will happen on those papers only, and ultimate buyers can lift that commodity. So see, like we are saying that around 8 to 13% is the logistic cost. If we can bring down that cost, say 4-5% also, that benefit will go to the farmer, that benefit will go ultimately to the buyer also. Similarly, other cost efficiencies, whatever, even warehousing, even financing, even lot of other efficiencies are coming, that may be passed on to the farmers. And ultimately, even if I suggest, even if government want to buy on MSP, why can't they buy that electronic negotiable warehouse receipt later on? If we are certifying those quality and quantity, everything. That's what they are doing in their system. So whosoever is a buyer, they can buy through this electronic negotiable warehouse receipt. And we at Origo, probably we are the first in this country. I think recently we have there was a news about securitization of this electronic negotiable warehouse receipt, where some of the Vibrity Capital has invested into that first transaction of 7 crore into of the maize, so that ENWR was traded, that was bought into and start trading in that segment. Ultimately, to facilitate and to give transparent and trustworthy platform for market linkages. What many WSP, including Origo, we have created a software called TradeFi recently. This is a blockchain-enabled software. You can just imagine that there is a software where warehouse at warehouse those softwares are working. Any depositor like Adani or anybody else who wanted to deposit their commodity over there, so all the systems are automated. Even the moisture readings, even the beverage, everything, those readings are not being fed manually. We are coming up with a kind of solution, then machine will take the reading and it will pass on ultimately and real-time basis to the software, and the person concerned sitting in say Ahmedabad or in Mumbai or anywhere, he can see what commodity has on behalf of me in which warehouse when it has come to my warehouse, and that real-time information, no manual intervention, that will be available, converted into electronic receipt. And we are coming up with the e-auction platform also, where even the reverse auction and the forward auction, that can also happen sitting at one place. So all those kind of automated and automated solutions, lot of technology is coming. I think nowadays government and everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. We are trying to use that into our working. This supply chain of agri business, let me tell you, it is very complex process. It is easier said than done, like and managing warehousing and managing the commodities in hinterland. It is not an easy job. But I think thanks to technology, thanks to a lot of automation processes, that is making our job very easy, and it is making so transparent and trustworthy platform for everybody, including bank, including depositor, including processor, everybody. So I think whatever you ask, I think this supply chain is transforming. We have come a long way, but it's still a long way to go. So that's my view on this. Thank you.
Can I join in whatever you've said? Excellent presentation, Singh Saab.
Sir.
The only thing which I see India is still not seriously working on is creating silo-based mandis. I'll tell you my own experience in Canada. In Canada, your yellow peas and maybe other commodities as well, which can go into silos, they're all traded silo site. So in silos are there in the hinterland, the goods come into those silos, and from there it gets traded. I see no reason why that kind of a scenario is not evolving in India. As far as soya is concerned, you could have silos and your silo becomes the market yard. The advantage in that is you will have a fair average quality which will get traded. Unlike in the flat warehouses in bags and all, no matter how much you automate, for a buyer, he will always want to inspect the goods, because one lot could be different from the other one. I'm sure you all face this. And the other thing is, at the market, at the warehouse level, the person who is actually handling the receipt and all is not Mr. Brijraj. He's some low-level functionary, and you can jolly well imagine what happens if somebody has to deposit, obviously, a low-quality material and passed off as high. So there, the technology will not work. But if you have a silo receiving, where automatically everything is FAQ. So that, why is nobody, no service provider thinking on those lines? Now that this new farm bill has come, I think it's businesses can evolve around that.
Yeah.
And then whoever wants to buy the material can buy the X silo and it will be an FAQ quality. That's it, period. And that can also be the negotiable instrument or whatever.
Yeah, I think, sir, you are absolutely right. Even I have seen some of the these practices when I visited to Australia long back. They have own farm silo, then the other silos, and then they are the port location silos. So supply chain is moving totally in bulk. And I think when we ask a question to the person over there, then when did you stop this bag handling in your country? It was around 50 years back. So they are not using, since last 50 years, they are not using any bag. You have rightly mentioned that I think homogeneity in quality is a issue. Maybe a small farm size is a issue. Mental block, like somebody, he deposited his commodity, he would like to come and see, inspect, where is my grain lying in your warehouse. That is not possible in probably that is not possible in case of when it is in silo. But let me tell you, sir, you raised the right point. Future of the supply chain will transform ultimately into this side only. Silo is the best way to store commodity. It will take some time, but definitely. See, right now, government is promoting this silo. I think Punjab, Haryana, everywhere silos are being constructed. Rail side silo, non-rail side silo. Now they are coming like smaller hub and spoke models are also coming in silo. So those things are getting promoted. But creating silo is not an issue. I think is solution is like Adani has created already. Like you have created silo in Moga, in Kathal, and then the entire supply chain, even the movement of cargo to the Bangalore also. So those are the solutions. Probably it may take time, but ultimately that's the best solution of it.
Singh Saab, let me share with you our own experience as far as Madhya Pradesh is concerned.
Sir.
In fact, there is a mental block in all of us that without bags, it cannot trade. Things cannot happen. This is our mental block, and it's been around for almost 50 odd years or maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
In Madhya Pradesh, we have created 6 silo sites in collaboration with the Madhya Pradesh Warehousing Corporation, and the farmers bring the wheat directly to those sites in bullock carts, in small little tractor trolleys or whatever, and we have the requisite arrangement to unload the same. The farmer doesn't produce the grain in bags. It is the mandi which creates those bags, and the attendant labor inefficiencies and the labor cost keeps multiplying and blah, 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 whatever all happens. So I think it's important that we create, and we don't need to be dependent on the government. The only thing we need to work on is create silo sites and tie them up with the NCDXs or the MCXs or the exchanges, and they can become the point of trading. The plants can buy from there and then pick it up and take it.
Yeah, you are right.
Cut down on big time as far as expenses go. I think somebody needs to seriously work on this.
One more thing. One more thing on this. So we did some structure 2-3 years back with a very large multinational company on, especially on soya. So that was actually one of the innovative structures, although we tried it for the first time. The most important thing which we see is that once you say that the co-mingling of a stock is allowed, so the farmer, when it comes, and I have given a guarantee to a farmer that this is the amount of money which you can get it today. Suppose on the day one when he comes, I give a guarantee this is the price. Other farmer comes from the same village. He is also having the same quality of a commodity. It passes the parameters, but they both are not sure that they think that my quality is much better than that. So one concept in a mind is that if I have to even return to the farmer a commodity which he wants after 6 months of time period from warehouse or from a silo, if he wants that, either I will give him a price, number one. If I give him a price what he wants, then I give him, he sells the metal to me. But if he wants his commodity, it is the same quality which will be delivered to him. So that concept in the mind at the start itself. So we did the structure. It didn't, move to a larger level, but we did around some 5 to 10 crores for around 2,000 farmers. But that it was very difficult for us as a bank to, wipe out that concept that if you have given yellow color bag, I will only return the yellow color back to you. So we were trying to do some farmer funding structure where the farmers will coming with a different bag, and if you come, before the delivery of before the season for your delivery, it may be lying on the lowest level of a stack, so I cannot withdraw that 2,000 bags and give you back. So first thing which has to go out is that you'll only get the quality which you have delivered. Now here what we did is that at the time when the entry is happening, I give him a premium. If suppose I have decided for a soybean, say 1022 is the thing which I'm going to buy. Uh, so above that, whatever the price is, I will give him the premium. Simple. On that day itself, that is closed. Or on the last day when I decide that this much percent, 1.5% is the premium which you are going to get, for the product when it is sold off. So then it actually, can happen. So premium and discount matrix is, clearly visible on the warehouse or on the silo to a customer, and he is on day one very clear that he is not going to the same, is not going to get the same material and the same soybean, what he has deposited, just like a currency. So that thought process has to got changed. It took, so we did around 1.5, 2 years, but there was always a hindrance because when so his farmer's father has deposited, son has come to take it back. He's saying, no, my bag is yellow, sir, you are giving me a different quality of material. There was a challenge. I think that mindset in terms of advertising to the farmer is that you sell the quality and you buy the quality. So if you don't want to sell it, you'll get the same quality. Simple. Over. I think that should be done by the warehousing companies in a sense.
The proof of the pudding is in eating. In fact, we face the same problem as far as buying of apples is concerned.
Yeah.
Apples, you've got more than 80% red material, less than 80, because redness is the basis, and the strength and the what we call it, the crunchiness of the apple is the basis on which you get paid when the farmer brings the apples. So you've got to have a transparent system at the time of receipt of the material, which the farmer can see. It's all SAP managed. He can see it on the computer. The quality check is done at the time of receipt itself. If he's satisfied, then it's fine. So initially, in the first 6 months, we had problems. But then, if you are honest and if you're doing a reasonably good job, it becomes your USP. And the same goes for your silo sites. You can have online facility for checking the moisture and the refraction. These are the only two things which are checked as far as soybeans or pulses or all these things are concerned. So it's very easy to address these issues. And because the silo is not receiving the goods in bags, he is receiving from the farmer in bulk in trolleys, on tractors or whatever, because the farmer is not producing those bags. It's the market yard and its inefficiencies which are producing that bags. Gradually, you will see the ecosystem would move on to handling goods in bulk. So ultimately, when you are taking your goods in HDP, woven sack or whatever, it's a criminal waste of money because the bag cannot be used again. And jute bags have actually priced themselves out. So I think the ecosystem will gradually change, and the silos could be the way forward, not necessarily the government silos which we have. It could be private sector creating those silos for the trade. This could be one way forward, and these silos can possibly handle most of the free-flowing grains. They can handle wheat, they can handle soya, they can handle pulses, they can handle all the free-flowing material. So I think the way forward, the key takeaway for me would be from these reforms is if we can create these silos and they become your hub for trading and for people to buy their material like silos, I think that could be one big game changing which can happen in this country with the implementation of these new farm laws. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Brijaji. Thank you, KM. Thank you, Atulji, for your views. I think the last 2 hours, in all honesty, have been 2 hours of education for us to think about as well. I think different opinions, I think a very engaging conversation. Almost felt like we did not need a moderator at all. I think the panelists themselves moderated the session, which I think goes to prove that the session was so engaging. I think people being able to contribute to each other's conversation. And again, want to thank you each and everyone, Atulji, Pathakji, KM and Brijaji as well, for taking the time out on a Friday morning. As I said, it's never easy to take out 2 hours to be able to do this. But hopefully, I think the attendees learned a lot. I know I did from the conversation itself. As I said, something to think about on the supply chain piece, the technology piece, and how I think the farm reforms have impacted. Goes beyond soybean itself, I think goes to how the farm linkage works. But thank you again. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you, Atulji. Thank you. Thank you
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pathak Saab.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Atulji, Pathak Saab.
Thank you, KM.